This is Lou Marino, and for today's tutorial, we're going to take some basic text and add layer style options to that text to make it visually more appealing. First thing we want to do is start a new project in Photoshop. I'm just taking 1000 by 800 pixel workspace and creating a new project. It just happens to be defaulting to white. What I'd like to do is just make it a little bit gray so that the text that we're going to use and the layer style options that we're going to use will probably stand out just a little bit better. So I'm just going to hit Edit, Fill. I'm going to select a color, and I'm just going to take a little bit of a light gray and fill it with the light gray. Next thing we want to do is go to our horizontal type tool over here in the toolbar. I'm selecting that type tool, and if you look at the top here, the default I have is white, so the text will be white. I'm using Copperplate Gothic bold, which usually is something that comes with your Photoshop setup. It's a little bit of a thicker font, and I'm picking this so that we can actually show more of the layer style options, or I should say show the options a little bit better. So I'm going to click on my workspace and type RACC for Reading Area Community College. I'm just going to center that, and it's a little small, so we're going to do some adjustments to it. I just happen to have in one of my toolbars over here the character panel, so I'm going to bring up the character panel, and I'm just going to change the pixel size. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So I'll make it about, let's see, yeah, about 200 or somewhere close to 200. Looks pretty good. I'm going to center that, and I think we're fine with the character panel at this point. So to bring up the layer style options, there are several ways to do it. You can right mouse click on the item and bring up the layer style options, or the easiest way to do it is just double click on the particular layer that you want to apply the options to. So that's what I'm going to do here on this text layer. I'm going to double click. My layer style options come up. So let me just go over a few of the options here that we have. We can bevel and emboss, which we'll get to in a little bit. And like a sub menu underneath bevel and emboss is contour and texture. Stroke, which is more like an outline. Inner shadow, which brings color inside the actual item, as opposed to inner glow, which will kind of make it a little hazy, and we can see how that works. I'll just go to the bottom here. Drop shadow is a popular thing we can use. Gradients and patterns are some things we might use. Color overlays, and again, we're not going to get to all of these. I just want to show you some of the basics. Okay, so let's start out with something really basic. So right now we just have some text here with no options on them. So let's start by trying to add a little shadow to this, and I'll show you how that works. So I'll just click on the drop shadow, and it remembers whatever the last set of criteria you had last time you used it. So let's play around with this just a little. So blending modes, there are 27 blending modes, and you can play around with them. I'm just going to stick with normal for now, which is basically as if you were coloring with a crayon or something like that, or a magic marker. I have the opacity set at 100 just to show you how that works. If you look at the shadow, as I move the opacity slider down, you can see the shadow start to disappear. And if I have it at 0, there's nothing, and I can just gradually bring it up. So that's whatever taste of drop shadow kind of opacity, it's up to you. Let's leave it like that for now. The angle, which is basically the shadow, which way the shadow direction goes, right now is 90 degrees, so it's straight down. If we wanted to say it was coming in from the upper left to the lower right, all we'd have to do is just change the angle, and you can see now that it looks like the shadow is coming from the upper left to the lower right. You can do that. The distance is how far out the shadow actually goes. So you can make it look like this, or you could just keep it like almost like a mild shadow. So I'm just going to keep it here around 15 or 16 or 17 for now. The spread, I'll do the spread. The spread is how thick it is, how thick the shadow is, and then the size. And this will kind of break it up a little bit as we go out um, to higher pixel levels. So it's kind of breaking up the shadow. And again, this is to your taste. So I'm going to leave it here at 9. And that's about all we want to show for this. There are a lot of other options, but let's keep the basic shadow for now. I'll just hit OK so you can see. So we basically took. I'm going to shut off the effect for now. We took a bare bones white text. We added a shadow to it. Just that simple action is making the actual text look a little bit better. So let's add a couple of other options here. So I'm going to shut off the drop shadow for now, and I'm going to double click again on the layer, bring up the layers panel, and let's look at something else. Some of the other options we can use. Stroke, like I said, is like an outline. So let's select that and go in. Right now I have the color on red, and the size is 1. And you can see there's a very thin red line here. So as we move the size up, you can see it getting thicker. All right. And one thing you should notice is that the actual stroke or outline is inside of the text because we have the position as inside. If I said outside, it would just put it on the outside of the text. Okay. And there's also another option to go from the center. So for now, I'm just going to pick the outside of the text just to show you how that works. And I have it set at 5. The blending mode is normal, and the opacity is 100. And again, like what we did before, if you move the slider up and down, you can tone down the color. So I'm just going to keep it at 100 for now, and I'm going to hit OK. So again, let's take away the stroke option and just show you from the basic text. Here's our basic text. First thing we did was we added a drop shadow. Second thing we did was add a stroke. And this is just clicking on the options. We've made it look pretty good. Just much different than earlier. So let's continue. Let's look at a couple of other of the layer style options. So the first one at the top of the list is bevel and emboss. This is a very powerful one. Right now I have it defaulting to a chrome look, and we're going to look at that a little bit later in this tutorial. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to reset some of these options, and then we'll go from there. So what you have is a couple of styles, actually 3 or 4 or 5 styles: outer bevel, inner bevel, emboss, pillow emboss, stroke emboss, and you can play with those options. So let's start with the outer bevel. So let's just select outer bevel and increase the depth. And if you notice, as we're increasing the depth and the size, you can see how the effect changes the text, and that's just by moving these sliders around. Let's see what inner bevel looks like. So inner bevel kind of brings it out off the page a little bit more. Okay, so that looks like kind of 3D-ish. All right, and you can change the softening level of it. You can change the technique, which is smooth or hard or soft on the chisel. So let me show you a couple of those. So if I hit hard chisel, you can see it gives it a much more defined edge. Chisel soft, not as much. Let's go with smooth for now. So right now we have the bevel and emboss of this style here. So let's put the other 2 styles back on top of it. So now it's giving it a different look. It may not look as good as I expected. So let's go back into stroke and kind of narrow the outline just a little bit. I think it'll look a little bit better. So right now we've applied three styles to this, layer styles to it. We, the bevel and emboss, stroke, drop shadow. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to zoom in just a little just to show you that we're going to add a pattern overlay to this. So what does that mean? So we're going to pattern overlay, and we're going to let me default it to normal. And I don't know if you can see right here, but this pattern is now applied to the text. So it's very, very light and a little bit tough to see. So let's pick something that we can actually get a better view on. So I'm just going to just randomly pick one of these styles. I just grab this one called weave, and I just applied that style, layer style, to the text. So now that's our fourth layer style. Again, it may not look the way you want it to, but you can always go back and change the pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in. I'm going to pick another pattern from my list, and you can actually cycle through them if you want. This one looks sort of like stone or marble, and so I'll just leave that in there for now. You could always adjust the pattern. You can change the opacity like most of them. So I'll just change the opacity a little bit. You can change the scale. So this scale is 100%, or just like what we consider like a normal view of this. But you can change it. You can lower the scale and it changes the look. You can raise the scale and it changes it a different way. I'm just going to leave it at 100, the normal look for now, and we'll go from there. So let's see what else we can add to this. We can add a gradient to it. Why don't we try that? I'm just going to add a gradient. What is a gradient? A gradient basically is changing colors from one to another, or sometimes in this case over here on the bottom left there are many colors, and you can just change the look of your text just by selecting a gradient. So let me just click around here and show you how the gradients could possibly work for you. And over here, this one I've selected goes from white to kind of a brownish color. And again, you can change the opacities if you want, make it more intense, less intense. It's up to you. You also have some angles you can change, linear, radial, reflected, in a diamond. You can see as I move them around, as I move the styles around, you can see them change. I think the default is linear, so we can leave that as it is for now. And I think I'll leave that way, and let's take another look at where we're at. So let's go again. Let's shut off all of the styles and start all over, and we can show you from the start what we did. So first thing we did, and it doesn't matter the order here. In fact, let's do it in a different order. There's our bevel and emboss, okay, and we can add a shadow to it, and it looks fine the way it is. But let's see what else we can do. I'll add the pattern back in, looking even better. The stroke, we just gave it a little bit of a stroke around the edges, and then we finished it off with a gradient overlay. The other thing we can do is, if we go back into this, is we can add inner shadows, inner glows. There are a lot of options you can do here, and we could play around with a few more of them. If you wanted to change the overall color of the text, even though it has other options applied to it, you can use a color overlay. For instance, if you wanted to maybe put a blue in there, you can go to your color overlay, select a color from your color picker, and let's select this kind of sky blue. And it's a little bit intense, but we do have the opacity at 100. So why don't we just start taking a little bit of that away? So as we take it away, we're starting to see that gradient come back, but we're also adding some of the blue color. So just to show you how that works, if I shut off the color overlay, you can see it goes back to the white on the brown color. But now I'm just going to add a little of the blue back in, and you can start to see how the blue is added. So that's basic. That's some of the basic um, text effects that you can add to a text image. There's also the ability to warp the text. So if we go back and we make sure that we have our horizontal type tool selected and we have our text layer selected, if you look at the top here where we have our options, we have, as we did earlier, we have the font style and the pixel size and the color. There's also this other icon here, which is warping. So if you click on the warping, you'll get some options, and it defaults to none, so there's no options applied. But if you hit the drop down, you'll see that there are about a dozen or so options that you can apply to the text. Arc, bulge, flag, you can inflate it. So why don't we just look at a couple of these, and we can see if we like any of them to use. So I'll hit arc for now, and you'll see what happens is it actually applies an arc shape, and you can change that shape by playing with the bend or the horizontal or vertical distortion. So if I take the bend and I kind of lessen it, it gets to be more straight. And if we go into the negative space, it'll take it below the horizontal line, and you can just move that around as you like. Okay, and that's just arc. I'll pick another one. Let's go to flag. Flag basically puts a wave into it. So if we increase the bend on that, you'll get a wave. Okay, and if we go to the negative side, it just makes it go the opposite direction. We could change it to vertical or horizontal. We have a lot of options here, and you could play with these and find out which ones you like better or worse. So over here we're using a rise, and it's just, again, you play around with the sliders, you can move it around. And I'll just do one more here. Bulge is an interesting one. You can actually bulge your text, and if you go to the negative, it goes the opposite direction. I went too far on that one, but here you go. It just kind of pinches it in. Okay, I'm going to hit cancel and bring it back to normal. So I just wanted to show you that there are some warping options that you can use in addition to the layer styles to enhance your image. Okay, so we're going to switch gears right now and move on to another